La 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 la. Welcome back to the channel. This is a sewing tutorial for a DIY trumpet skirt that has a fairly simple principle. So in this tutorial, I'm going to be starting literally from the pattern, since a lot of you usually request I show you how to make the patterns. So I'm working from a size 10 skirt block. You can also trace off your pencil skirt and sort of continue from where I am right now. So I'm going to decide on how long I want, that top half of the skirt to be. And I decided for 35 centimeters because I don't want that to be too long, because there's going to be like a ruffle underneath to make the skirt even longer. So I'm going to trace around the pattern here, and this pattern already has seam allowance. I'm going to mark where my darts are going to sit and all the necessary points. So I'm going to go ahead and refine those traced out lines just to make it much clearer for me. So once I'm done tracing it all the way around, I'm going to draw in my darts because I want the waist of the skirt to be fitted. So I added seam allowance all the way around because I just wanted to be sure. I didn't want any situations whereby the skirt to be too tight. I just added an additional 1 centimeter all around the skirt. So because this is the front, we're going to cut it on a fold. As you can see, the CF is the center front and the side seam is the SS. So for the back, you essentially repeat the same, and you just trace around either your skirt or your skirt block pattern and add your seam allowance, add your darts. The back usually has 2 darts because your bum curves in at that point and it has to be smooth around the back of the skirt. So the additional pattern we will need is the flare, which will gather back into the hem of the skirt to make the ruffles which you saw earlier on. And the length is 110 centimeters and it is 15 centimeters wide. We will also need facings for the front of the skirt, and as you can see, I've sort of marked how wide I want my front facing to be, and we'll also need facing for the back, but we would not be tracing out the darts because you usually add your facing after you've sewn in your darts. So I've got myself fresh pattern paper and I've folded it in half, and I'm sure this is going to be wide enough for my facing. So what you want to do is fold in your darts in such a way that you eliminate it when it's time to trace it onto the new pattern paper. And you can either hold it down with tape or just secure it with your fingers while you place it on the pattern paper. So for the front, what you want to do is place it along that fold line so you can get one long strip of front facing, and just trace around the waistline of the front and the sides as well. As for the bottom of the facing, you can decide how curved you want it to be. So once I've traced that out, I'm going to refine my lines as usual with my pattern master and add my 1 centimeter seam allowance just to be sure. So once I'm done doing that, I'm going to mark all my notches, and this is what it looks right now. So the cool thing about doing this on the fold is, once you cut it on this side, it's going to be the same thing on the other side of the pattern. That's a brilliant thing about either cutting one piece and cutting it on the fold in the fabric, or doing it on the fold in the pattern paper. So once you open it up, you have one piece of pattern. So I'm just going to cut out the front facing as I'm doing here, and you see once I open it up, I'm going to have one pattern piece. So don't forget to mark your notches and write down any necessary information you need so you don't get confused as to what pattern this is. So I'm just going to write down the information I need, my center front line, and how many pieces I'm going to be cutting. I repeated the same thing for the back, and I ended up with these number of patterns. So I have my skirt front, back, the piece for the flare, my front and back facings. So as you can see, I have my front piece, which I'm going to cut in a fold, and I'm going to get one big piece of material for the front. As for the back, I'm going to cut two pieces. As you can see, the back has two darts, and I'm going to leave that place is cut too, because you're going to fix your zip in the center back. So you also need your facings, as we've done, and you need two for the back and one for the front. As for the fabric, you guys must remember this material that I got from my fabric haul. I can't believe I used this fabric, but I did, and I am in love with the prints. I don't know if these are horses or dogs, but the colors are beautiful and lovely. So I've gone ahead and pinned all my pattern down the way I want, respecting my grain lines, and I'm just cutting out all the pieces I need here and moving on to the next process. So these are the pieces I've gotten for my skirt. As you can see, the back has two pieces. The front has one big piece because I don't want to seam in the front. I have my facings, two for the back and one for the front. And then I have my skirt flare, which is a big piece at the bottom here. Now that we have all our fabric pieces, it is time to sew. The first thing in the sewing process is to work on the darts. So the front and the back of the skirts both have darts, and as you can see here, I've pinned down the darts the way I want, and I've marked where I'm going to be stitching the darts up onto. So as for darts, you really have to taper out those edges, so once it's time to press it open, it's sort of goes to nothing, and you don't have like gathering or puckering around the very point where you stop your dot. So as you can see here, I tried as much as possible to sort of taper out as I was sewing. So you start from 1 cm, and as you get to that marked point, you go to like the very edge of the material. So I've worked on the front and the back darts, and the next thing for me to do is to think about the side seams of the skirt. The next step is to pin together the side seams of the back panels together with the front. So once it's time to take this to your machine, all you have to do is stitch 1 centimeter seam allowance from the top of the skirt all the way to the bottom on both sides. So using a normal straight stitch, I am going to sew together the side seams of both sides of the skirt and just slowly ease around the hip of the skirt, because the back does have ease and you have to ease that into the front. So many eases. So after this, you have to overlock your seams, because oh god, this fabric frays like crazy, like it's insane. So this is what the skirt looks like at this point. I haven't pressed anything yet. You should. Just don't be like me, press your skirt when you sew. But after this, I have to think about attaching the hem to the skirt. So the hem, essentially, which is the flare or the ruffles that you saw earlier on, is a gathered piece that is going to go back into the skirt. And to create gathers, you sew a loose stitch and pull the bobbing thread to create gathers. So what you do essentially is you slowly pull the bobbing thread and push the gathering into the piece. Be careful here, because the thread might break if you pull too hard. So once that is all gathered as much as I want, I am going to attach it to the hem of the top skirt. I'm first of all going to pin it together, and as I'm pinning, I'm easing away those gathers, so there is enough to go around the entire length of the skirt. So once I've pinned everything together, I am going to sew the ruffles to the top skirt using a normal straight stitch with normal tension. So on the 1 centimeter seam allowance, I am going to sew this gathered ruffle piece into the skirt, and as you are sewing, just rearrange those gathers so they look nice and pretty when you turn this over. So once I'm done stitching, I'm going to take this to my overlocker and overlock those seams, because it just makes the whole process easier. So once I'm done doing that, I'm going to overlock the actual hem of the ruffle as well. So this is what it looks like right now. It looks really neat and tidy, and it looks really good as well. The ruffles came out quite cute, and the gathers are not too much. I hate too many gatherings. So the next thing I'm going to think about now is how to attach the zip onto the skirt. So I'm going to mark where I sort of want the zip to end, and what I'm going to do is pin together the rest of the center back of the skirt, and I'm going to stitch all the way from the bottom to that point, because you're going to fix the zip on the top half. So I'm just going to sew this on 1 centimeter seam allowance up until the point where we marked, and then overlock the seams separately. You don't want to overlock them together because you're going to fix a zip in that center back seam. So once I'm done overlocking, it's time to work on the facing. So I have my front and my back facings, and we're going to attach their sides. So I'm going to pin the right side of the back to the right side of the front, and the left side of the back to the left side of the front. So I'm going to sew the side seams together and then overlock them, so it's one long piece at the end of the day. After this, I'm going to go ahead and overlock those seams as well as the hem of the facing. So once we join it onto the skirt, it has a nicely, beautifully finished hem as well. So this is what the skirt looks like right now, and we are going to fix the zip. So using the similar method I've used in previous tutorials, I'm going to pin the zip into the center back seam like this. And what you want to do is you want to leave, you know, that top tape, you don't want to pin it into the skirt, you want to leave it out, so the tape of the zip has something to hold on to when you fix the facing. So this is what it looks like right now. As you can see though, that extended tape bit is out, and we are going to pin on the facing, so we join everything in one go. So I'm going to pin together the side seam of the facing to the side seam of the skirt, as well as the back seams, the center fronts. Just join those crucial notches together so everything is sort of in place. So once I'm done pinning all those other parts, I am going to pin the center back of the facing to the center back of the skirt, sandwiching the zip in between like this. So the brilliant part about fixing zip like this is once you turn it inside out, you don't see any sort of raw edges of any seam, you just see the teeth of the zip. So using one continuous stitch, I am going to sew from one end of that zip all the way around the waist of the skirt, turning at that point and all the way to the under end of this zip. So we're going to use just one stitch to do the entire process, and it just makes it really nice to do and quite straightforward, because once you get to that corner, all you have to do is turn like this and then continue sewing all the way around to the other side of the skirt. And doing this, you get both the zip, you attach the facing, and you finish off the waistline of the skirt really nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and finish off joining this other side of the zip to the skirt and continue with the rest of this process. So the next thing that we're going to do is cut off any excess bits, that excess tape that we left out earlier on, and you know that corner, sort of cut off that triangle so it's easier to relax when you fold this inside out. And then we're going to snip little points. You don't have to get to the thread, just snip across the skirt, so when you turn it inside out, the tension of the thread is not as bad. So I'm just quickly going to turn this inside out like this for both sides of the skirt, and this is what it looks like right now. Like I said, it's a really nice way to fix zips into waistlines of skirts and pants. So the next thing we're going to do to ensure the facing stays inside where it's supposed to be is we're going to stitch the facing to the seam on the 0.5 centimeter seam allowance. So you don't want to get it on the skirt, you just want to get the facing, and you know that seam that is on top, so it looks somewhat like this. Doing this ensures the facing stays inside of the skirt, and even while you have it on, it doesn't sort of fold out while you wear it and walk around. And it's a really nice way to finish up skirts because you don't see that rough hem. All you see is a beautifully finished seam, and because that stitch that we've just done is inside, you don't see it as well. So the next thing I'm going to do is give this a beautiful nice press so everything is nice and flat, and then work on the hem of the skirt. So I'm going to fold the hem in by 1 centimeter and stitch it all the way around to finish off this skirt. And this is the finished outcome. It was really simple. I wanted the skirt to be easy and straightforward because the fabric is quite eccentric and has a lot of character. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this tutorial. The skirt came out really cute. I got loads of compliments while I went to shoot it, and I hope you guys would recreate it in your spare time. So I would love to know your thoughts and comments and ideas down below. If you have any questions, I'm open to all of them as well. And until my next video, have a beautiful morning, afternoon, and evening wherever you are. Bye.